I am no longer sort of stuck in this Freerian horizontal violence stage wherein I'm fighting against my brothers, I'm fighting against my sisters. We collectively recognize ourselves as mass, right? There really is no other way to do it. There's pros and cons to that, more cons than pros, but with respect to sort of liberation theory, we recognize ourselves as mass. That recognition is our first bid for freedom. Okay, in note 86, he says, one speaks of freedom. Again, free. Right, and I'll just put freedom. So both in 215 and 86, direct quotes from each section, he talks about freedom. In note 86, he says, one speaks of freedom. That is, one wants to get away from those in power. Right? And I did a whole diagram on this, and the diagram is actually embedded earlier, I don't know how many pages back, on exactly the same discourse, attaining power. Okay, so it's undeniable that freedom, the desire, the attempt, the drive for freedom is an integral, a necessary component of attaining power by the oppressed, right? The oppressed have to want freedom, but the way that they go about this, I would say, is via recognition. And I've justified both of those statements based on the text. The next, again, note 215, so number 2. Remember 4 steps, so that's step 1, this is step 2. Step 1 is freedom. Step 2 is they enter into battle. They demand recognition, equal rights, justice. Right? And it's not just justice, but a demand for justice. Now that we've recognized ourselves, we want those in political power to acknowledge our recognition, and we want justice. We want justice. Okay. Note 86, same thing. Note 86, one demands justice from those who are in power. One speaks of equal rights. He used both of the concepts. So in note 215, he talks about equal rights and justice. In note 86, he talks about equal rights and justice, right? So justice, and obviously both of these concepts of justice require a notion of equal, right? The idea of justice is being balanced, is being fair. Well, what's being balanced is the rights. Those rights must be equal, right? So that now when we talk about us, first we have to create the us. So there has to be a recognition of the group, the mass. That recognition of the group, the mass, is our bid for freedom. Once we've recognized, defined, identified, articulated what the nature of the group is, then we require justice, we want fairness, and what is that fairness a means to? It's a means to, you should see that justice is a means, right? Justice is a means to equal rights, sort of balancing the scales. Both of the words, and specifically the word justice and the phrase equal rights, are both articulated under the same notion, attaining power, both in note 86 and in note 215. So it's obviously not accidental. So what we recognize is freedom, justice, and equal rights are the means in which we go about doing this. Now, exclusively, right, this next bit is exclusive to 215. It's only found in note 215. Number 3, he says, we demand privilege, they demand privileges, right? This is a direct quote. They draw the representatives of power on their side. So this is the demand for privilege, right? The demand for privilege. Now that the rights are being balanced, we want privileges, right? We want, in a sense, and obviously this is an unfair move if you follow the idea, they want benefits for their group over other groups, right? The discourse has said that, well, these benefits might be needed in order to fully equalize the scales, but obviously the majority is going to look at the minority as saying, well, that's not fair. Why should you get advanced privileges Why should you get more benefit than the rest? And I'm not going to have that discourse here, but everyone knows what this means, right? So they demand privileges. And then number 4, lastly, they demand exclusive power, and they get it. This is what Nietzsche says, right? They demand exclusive power, and they get it. And again, I've already discussed this at length, so I'm not going to rehash it. But the idea is the oppressed make a bid to those in power for equal rights, for justice. If they don't get it, they try to appeal and get power themselves. If they if they are successful in attaining power, then what they do is the oppressed now become the oppressor, and they oppress their former oppressor. And I drew a whole sort of map of this concept before, right? So they eventually attain exclusive, right? They eventually attain exclusive power, and they get it, so according to Nietzsche. So we're looking first at a bid for freedom. This bid for freedom requires that the group get organized, that they recognize each other. Obviously, if you want to deny the bid for freedom, you keep the group fighting amongst themselves. The more they fight amongst themselves, the less likely they will be to even attain group identity. And insofar as they fail to attain group identity, they'll never attain freedom. But it's not really about the freedom, because we're all free now in this. Well, that's not true. There's an incredible population of slaves in the world, but we perceive, at least within the United States, that we're all free. So insofar as it's freedom, freedom's not the threat anymore. We don't live in a global slave society anymore. What's the threat is the attempt to attain exclusive power.